Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So I've been away on another long hiatus, mostly to get some life goals accomplished, but also to get the basis of the home automation completed here in the home so I can have some content to share with you guys. And on that topic, today I want to share with you guys what I'm using to mostly interact with and control the home automation in the home here in my office. And it's none other than the Lenovo ThinkSmart View. Now, this device was intended to run Microsoft Teams, but you can root it and run Android on it. And I'll show you how to do that here in a bit and some of the things I learned along the way. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, let's do a quick unboxing and then we'll get into the tutorial I found online for you guys. And I'm not saying that like it's my own original work. Of course, I did a lot of rabbit hole scrolling over the days to find a cheap solution that would work. And as mentioned, this is what I came up with. The Lenovo ThinkSmart View. This device was intended to run Microsoft Teams. And it was a big hit, especially like around my office and stuff around COVID. But obviously, as those markets tended to dry up, everybody didn't need necessarily a dedicated device just for Teams video on the desk. It was a great concept, in my opinion, but just did not gain legs. So the principle behind it was basically you'd have this device that sat on your desk that ran Teams full time. And whenever you wanted to hop into a video conference call, you just do it from this small screen. So here's the device in all its glory. There's just a power cord plug here, and it appears there's no ports on this device. However, under this little rubber foot is a hidden USB Type-C port. This will be vital for us flashing the device to get Android running on it. Takes a bit of work to get it open, and let's see if we can get this in focus here so you guys can kind of see where it is and what it looks like. I mean, I know you've probably seen a USB-C port before, but just showing you there's no smoke and mirrors here. Let's see here, just waiting on the camera to focus. There we go, coming into focus now. So there's your USB Type-C port. That's what you'll need in order to flash this device, along with the instruction documentation that I will provide a link for down below, as well as show you guys here in the next couple of scenes. So we're going to go ahead and get this ready, and then we're going to start following the documentation. Okay, so to get this device out of its stock function as working as a Teams device, I found this write up online and followed it pretty closely on how to get the Lenovo ThinkSmart View to run as an Android device. It's a pretty lengthy write up, but it actually was recommended as a way to run Home Assistant, which is the home automation platform I chose to base my house off of. So I figured it would be a good start. Now, there are some warnings here. One of which is that it's fairly common that if you're using a USB 3.1 cable and or device, you may run into some issues. I admittedly did run into some issues with my laptop that I was running off of, but that's more so because that laptop had BitLocker and Secure Boot on by default. If you don't know what those are, this may not be the video for you. If you do, I would advise turning those off before you start this process, and then following the process as closely as possible. Try not to skip any steps, and there are a couple of troubleshooting steps here in this documentation. The first thing you want to do is make sure you have a folder structure that you can reference, download all of the necessary files, and put them in one of two folder structures. Then you're going to want to download the application needed to flash the ThinkSmart View. And then from there, you're going to just basically follow the guide. It literally walks you through clicking the install button, clicking finish, and restarting the PC. It's a pretty extensive guide. So here's how my folder structures looked after I got them all set up. I have one with the ThinkSmart View files that were recommended, and then another with a couple of the install applications here, like the loader and the ADB fast boot application. So now that I have all of those ready to go, I was able to just go through the process. And again, install as they recommend going down this list. So first you're going to install QPST, and again, follow the instructions. And then you get to the part where you're going to flash the image. So here's where things can get a little bit tricky. But again, if you follow the guide, you should be okay. And here's where the differences in the cable comes into play as well. So again, I started on this laptop and I switched to my tried and true reliable laptop with a lot of security features turned off that never really touches the internet. So I just put the files on there, installed them there, and ran from there. I did run into some hiccups, and I think it was mostly because of Windows updates, which is why I switched from this laptop to that one. So once you follow all of the steps in the guide and gotten through either installing the software required or downloading the files necessary, you're gonna be at the QFill tool screen. So I'm gonna switch over to my other laptop to show you guys how that looks. So first thing first, you're gonna go ahead and open the QFill application. I always run it as administrator. You probably don't have to, but I didn't see any errors when I did that. So you're gonna select flat build, find the path for your file. So I'm gonna browse just to kind of show you. So you're gonna look for this prog-emmmc file, underscore firehose, just like in the instructions. And it's under the image folder, just to kind of show you where it is. I've already done this on the other two devices. This is the third one. So just to kind of show you how it should look. Then you're gonna make sure you select the build file. And again, that's gonna be in that Teams folder. And you're gonna use the raw unparsed and patch 0. And that's gonna be your flat build file. Now from here, you should be ready to connect the device. And then once you connect the device, where it says no port available up here at the top, that's gonna change to show you that there's a device available. See, now it says, please select an existing port. You're gonna select the port for the USB device that you just hooked up, being your tablet. Once it's all ready to go, you're gonna hit download, and this is gonna push the file out to the tablet. And now you're just gonna wait for the file to finish pushing to the ThinkSmart View. Once it's done, you should see it say success or complete. If you get the error, the infamous Sahara error, you may wanna go back and do some troubleshooting or verify that you did all the steps correct. As I stated in my case, the laptop I was using initially was a little bit too new, and I'm pretty sure there were some security patches somewhere along the way getting in the way. Rather than troubleshooting that, I just switched to my old tried and true laptop that I've used in the past and that I used to do the initial screen with. That gave me success, and I was able to move on to the next steps. Okay, so if everything went successful up to this point, you're ready to move on to the next step. If not, then go back through the troubleshooting steps and tips in the documentation to fix what may be the issue. At this point, we're now ready for the next step, which is going to involve us loading the recovery file from the folder that you unzipped earlier. So we're going to have to turn off the Lenovo ThinkSmart View for a couple of seconds. We're at that part of the instructions, and then turn it back on. And then we're gonna look for the tool manager. And at that point, the tool menu, and then the partition manager. And then at that point, we'll be able to add the recovery file, which is gonna allow us to reboot this device in recovery and actually start doing some of the things that gets this thing ready to boot. Okay, so continuing to follow the instructions, you're going to click on Tools and go to the Partition Manager, and then you're going to hit OK. And once this loads, you want to find the label that says Recovery. So you're going to scroll through this list. Should be closer toward the bottom. Going to select it, right click, and then from here you're going to select Manage Partition Data. You're going to click on Load Image, and then this should take you to that folder directory you created earlier where you're going to select the recovery file. As you can see, I moved my lineage recovery image outside of the folder. So I'm going to go ahead and select the unofficial Starfire recovery image and select Open. And just like you were instructed to do in the instructions, you're going to go ahead and load the image and let that do its thing. Okay, so now that we've loaded the recovery image, we're ready to put the device in the recovery mode. So at the last step, before you hit OK, you're going to go ahead and hold the volume button as indicated in the instructions, the volume up button. And then you're going to go ahead and hit OK. And from here, the device should reboot into recovery mode. Again, reference the instructions to see what the screen should look like, but it should look like the screen that you're going to see here in a few seconds. Okay, so now while we're in this menu, the touchscreen actually doesn't work. So as per the instructions, you use the volume keys to navigate around, and then you use the camera shutter to make your selection. We are going to select Wipe Data Factory Reset. Once it's highlighted, it should go through that process, and it should not take long. And then you're gonna go ahead and select Apply Update, and then apply from ADB. When ADB side load is shown in red, the device is ready. So now you can close out QFill and run the ADB Fast Boot application. If you don't already have ADB Fast Boot installed, go ahead and pause the video and do that now. But now we're going to go ahead and open ADB Fast Boot. Just like with QFill, I always load my applications as administrator just in case there's any hiccups or issues with permissions. Usually this will help you get past that. So that's just a little tidbit I've always done whenever running an application that needs at least some type of power user level access. Okay, once you have ADB Fast Boot up and running, go ahead and verify on your ThinkSmart View that you're actually ready to load. Sometimes this can time out, so you need to make sure your stuff's still highlighted on the screen, or possibly back out and load it back in, just in case you're concerned about it not being ready. Okay, now that ADB Fast Boot is running as an administrator and you verified your selection, go ahead and toggle the camera slider and you're ready to run the command. Once you run the command, it should show you the device is loaded and you should see a screen that looks very similar to this, showing that the device is ready to run commands. Then from here, you can go ahead and copy and paste step 26, but make sure when you do the change directory or CD, you put in the file path, the folder path for where the file is, the ADB siloed lineage image. Make sure you post that in. Make sure it's the correct folder root. And just verifying the location here. Like I said, this is different from the computer I was on. So you just want to make sure you are in the root folder like I mentioned. And you're just going to copy that root folder directory and paste that into your ADB Fastboot and hit enter. And then from there, it should change the directory to now show the root folder. And then you're ready to run the two commands that are below that in step 26. So first we're going to run the ADB sideload lineage 15.1, which is basically the file. So now you're pointing it toward the file so that it can install the file to the ThinkSmart View. So pretty much the same thing here. I just typed ADB sideload, and then went to the actual file itself. Just in case you downloaded it more than once and there's like a number appended, you can actually just right click, hit rename, and copy what's pasted there, what's shown there, and paste it into the ADB Fastboot menu and hit enter. And then you're just gonna wait for that to load. It does take a little bit of time, so we're gonna skip ahead. It takes probably about 5 or so minutes, depending on your computer. And then we're gonna run the ADB side load open gaps arm, which is just a bit of an update to help with some of the features of the ThinkSmart View. So now that that part's done, we're gonna go ahead and do the same process for the Pico zip file. So just go back and delete the original file. So we're just gonna have ADB sideload again, and then we're going to copy and paste the name again, and just put it in here and hit enter, and it should load. So like I said, just go to the file, hit rename, copy that, and then paste it into your ADB sideload window, and go ahead and hit enter. Since we're already in the file path, it should just load right away. And it looks like I missed the zip at the end of the extension, so just go back and make sure you add that. Make sure that it has the entire file name including the extension, and it should run. Again, this shouldn't take long, and then once this is done, we can go ahead and reboot the device. So since we're essentially done once you get to this step, next steps will be to go ahead and close out all of these menus once you get the 100% complete on the Pico file, and reboot the device as normal. You should be presented with the main screen like you would on a cell phone or any other Android device, where you just go through the prompts and set it up like it's a new device. So once you get to that screen and get through all of those menus, then you're ready to go ahead and download whatever smart home automation application you're going to be using as your base. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. So I'm going to be using Home Assistant from henceforth. And that's mostly just because it works with everything, pretty much everything I've pointed at it thus far. And again, we'll take a look at that in another video, but just wanted to share that little tidbit while we're going through this process here. So it should almost be done. So I'm going to go ahead and start to close out the computer. And then from here, we will just go through the prompts from the camera view. Okay, now we're just about done. So we can go ahead and stop the recording on the computer, and we will go ahead and reboot the ThinkSmart View so it can start to load into the main OS. So from there, we can load our Home Assistant application, as well as an app called Yak, which I'll explain here in a bit. So now we're just gonna go ahead and let it reboot. And behind the screen, show you guys real quick, here's the screen I have on the desk that stays here permanently, and that's what we'll get to eventually here in just a bit. Okay, so now we're just waiting on the device to finish booting into the Lineage OS. So we're gonna go ahead and skip ahead a little bit and come back once it finishes doing its thing. This could take anywhere from, I think the longest I've had it take was probably like 5 to 6 minutes. And it's just the initial boot, getting everything basically unpacked and getting you into basically the start menu / setup menu for it running Android. So we'll be back in just a few seconds. Okay, so one more quick note here. Once you actually get into the OS and get past like your initial little setup screen, you may get stuck at this screen here. And even in the instructions, they speak about it. All you have to do is hit the back button, but I'd give it like a minute or two, and then you'll be presented with the screen to proceed. And from here, you should be selecting setup as new device. And then from there, it should pretty much bring you to basically the launcher or the main screen of the Lineage OS Android OS. So see you guys in a second. Okay, so just a few more screens of the normal Google stuff. most of which I skipped through. You don't want to set up a password on this unless you really feel like unlocking it every time you get to it. But since I have mine set up with the proximity sensor so that I walk up to it and it turns on, I elected not to use a pin. And of course, skip through all of this other stuff, deny or add it, do whatever you choose. And now you should be presented finally with the Lineage OS splash screen and then the dashboard for the main launcher. And now we're ready to download. Okay, and so the two apps I want to get from my instance, the first one I mentioned to you guys is Yak, which allows you to use the camera again as a proximity sensor, preventing you from having to interact with the camera switch. The thing I found is that when you turn it off and on, uh, it can be kind of mismatched. And if you're going to be doing any video from the camera, you always want it open. So that's kind of why I elected to go that way. And just going to let Yak install here. And then we're going to go ahead once it finishes up and install Home Assistant. I found that doing it this way made it a lot easier to interact with this as a hub as opposed to a tablet. Again, that's just my personal preference. If you guys want to add a lock screen and you don't really care about the camera, you can use the physical camera switch as your on off. But it can get out of sync if you do choose to use the camera and you don't have an option like a power button like you would traditionally. So now that we've wrapped that up, we're going to go ahead and download and install Home Assistant. And then we're going to go ahead and get that configured as well. And now by making Home Assistant the companion app for Yak, that will allow it to start on boot and launch Home Assistant automatically. So if the device reboots, it will automatically launch Home Assistant. And then from here, the next step is allowing the camera to detect motion like we discussed so that Yak can wake itself whenever it detects motion on the camera. I also enabled the camera string for something I want to try out later to kind of see if I can use the camera in Home Assistant with the VMS solution I'm going to use for an additional camera feed. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so now we're ready to launch Home Assistant. We have the two icons on the main home screen. We're just going to select the Home Assistant icon, not the Yak icon. And we're going to go ahead and go through the setup process super quick here. So past the initial start screen, you get the option to either manually look up your URL or type in a known URL if you have one. And since we have the web integration set up, which I'll show you guys in a later video, I'm just going to go ahead and type in my private URL, which is set up for my instance of Home Assistant, which will allow me to log in back into the home network, although it works whether I'm here or not, just in case I ever put this device on a different network. Like if I travel with it, for example, I can still do all the home automation here back at home as long as the Home Assistant server is running. So now that we're done with that, you're at the screen where it's going to ask for your username and password. So I'm going to go ahead and input that information off screen as well and start the login process so that we can get to the main menu here. And this just takes a couple of seconds. It's just verifying that I'm on the internal network as opposed to external. And we should be logging in here in just a second. All right. So now we're at the screen where you can give the device a friendly name. And this is for a few reasons. One of which is so Home Assistant can basically reference which device is doing what. There's also some tracking options if you log in from your phone or like your smartwatch, for instance, which I think is kind of cool. Notice that if I have it set up on my smartwatch and I lose my smartwatch, since my watch actually has GPS, I can track it. So that's pretty cool, but could also be bad in a way. All right, so now that we've given it kind of a friendly name, since it's just going to go up in the upstairs office, we are almost back into the main menu with all the devices that we already have hooked up on Home Assistant, which I'll be showing in a later video. Some of which how I got them hooked up, and some of which may have taken like an integration or a plugin to set up. Okay, so we are just about done, almost back to the overview page. Should be loading here in a second. Once we get this up, then we can change just a few more settings, and then this device will be ready to be placed in the room. So I want to change basically the startup page. I have a little home tab that I'm using now with just some basic integrations like the thermostat, the doorbell, and the camera. That was what you guys saw in the background earlier on the one that's already on my desk. So just like the lock and a couple of light switches and the thermostat, just the comforts and the front doorbell. The other thing I want to change is put it in dark mode. It's just easier on the eyes, especially sometimes I like to work in the room, you know, with a little bit of darkness. I promise I'm not Batman, but yeah, so changing that to me makes it easier on the eyes and a little bit easier if you're in a low lit room, especially, for example, the one that I'm going to go ahead and configure for the bedroom as well. That way in the middle of the night, even if the screen boots up, it's not, you know, just blaring white in your face. So now that we kind of got all of that set up, just get this turned around here real quick. We will be ready to put this guy up in the office. And yeah, from here, it's pretty much set up. So again, I'm gonna have three of these. I'm still thinking about possibly doing the $100 tablet for the living room and using it kind of as a smart remote that we can kind of lounge around with, put it on the end table. But that may be a later project. I think these as stationary devices will be great for the two offices and the bedroom. I may do one for the guest room. I'm still debating on what I'm gonna do in the media room, but those are all future videos. And as you can see here in this home, we have quite a few projects we can pursue. So now that we have this set up, we are pretty much ready to launch and back to the startup page that has the cameras, the thermostat, and the lock like I mentioned previously. So there you go. This one's all ready to go. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this video. Again, as always, hopefully you guys liked it and learned something. If you did, make sure you hit the like, subscribe, and click on the bell notification so you get notifications anytime I post new content. Hopefully I won't be gone as long with the follow-up content. I do have some stuff already kind of queued up that I need to probably fine tune just because some of the information has aged a bit, but I'll see you guys on the next video. Later.